Welcome to Venezuela Insider, the only place in Venezuela for expats, digital nomads, entrepreneurs, investors, travelers, and related internationals. For more information, venezuelainsider.com. Today we are talking about Venezuela joining the BRICS nations. Apparently, it's a very good possibility that Venezuela joins the emerging bloc of countries formed by Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, BRICS, the acronym for all of these countries, and this is a great deal. We have spoken on the channel a couple of times that the world is becoming bipolar. For one hand, we will have the G7 nations, United States and its allies, most Western allies, and by the other hand, you have China, the second largest economy of the world, and all of its allies. And of course, these countries will trade with each other. I'm talking from the both blocs. However, it's a reality that these blocs are emerging right now, and Venezuela is poised to join BRICS nations. And today we are going to discuss further. So let's start. So just a few weeks ago, Maduro attended a South American summit with, of course, presidents of the South American nations on Brasilia, the capital of Brazil, and he joined President Ignacio Lula da Silva that he's starting his administration on Brazil. Remember, Lula is a left-leaning president with left-leaning ideologies, so he is very good friends with all of the left-leaning nations. Of course, it has some sort of diplomatic relationship with, let's say, right-wing leaning presidents like Lacalle from Uruguay and Lasso from Ecuador, that is going to be replaced on just a few months. And also with the new president of Paraguay, is also a right-leaning president. Anyway, so on this summit, Maduro formally announced that Venezuela is going to apply to join the BRICS nations, and Brazil, being of course one of those nations, represented by Lula da Silva, he is very in favor of Venezuela joining the nations. Also, has been a couple of official statements by both Russia and China, the biggest of these emerging countries, of course China being the top dog on the BRICS nations, and all diplomatically have given the green light in order to this process to go further. So most likely Venezuela by the next year, maybe the year after, is going to be joining the BRICS nations, and many other, let's say, Eastern economies are formally applying, joining the BRICS nations as well. The most important, of course, Saudi Arabia, who is the most important oil producer on the world, but some other countries have formally applied to join BRICS nations, like the UAE, the Emirates, Iran, Egypt, Bahrain, Algeria, Argentina, and now Venezuela. So it's getting some traction, the BRICS nations. So today we're going to explain what is the importance of the BRICS nations, and also what will be the benefit for the Venezuelan economy. So the BRICS nations are an economic bloc, of course, we discussed that seeks integration and economic strength, joining forces with these huge economies. That, of course, these economies are not as developed regarding GDP per capita of standard of living, but these economies have, first, they are very rich on commodities and natural resources, also have a very good pool of labor and human capital, and also industrialization. That's probably the weakest point of the G7 nations, especially the United States. But these countries are very strong regarding both natural resources and industrial power, and of course
human capital. Very good. Now, the key takeaway here is they are discussing to have their own currency in order to replace the transactions on US dollar. And also they have their own development bank. There will be something similar to the IMF and the World Bank. And they are trying to establish maybe trade laws that are in favor, low tariffs, low taxes, and smooth the international transaction. So I'm very agree with that. So also there are thinking of interconnecting the whole BRICS nations with an undersea cable in order to be more, let's say, secure of the networks, the global networks that are controlled by Western nations, especially the United States, because there's a little bit distrust between BRICS nations, especially China, and the G7 economies, especially the United States. So this economic bloc is not as large. They have 3.3 billion people. That's 40% of the total population. And if those process of integration of the new members pans out, they could reach 50% of the world population. And right now they have a 25 trillion GDP size of their combined economies. That will represent close to 30% of world GDP. And of course, the new members end up joining, they could increase their quota to, let's say, 35% of world GDP. So very important fact. Of course, these applications require some process and going on, and some political will on each of these economies. So these countries, like I said before, they are rich on resources, industrialization, and human capital, but also on technology. China and India are very cutting edge regarding technology. They're very good technological wise, and of course Russia very good. Russia and Brazil very rich on oil resources, and South Africa has a pretty much decent economy for sub-Saharan standards. Now, one of the major diplomatic and geopolitical issues that the BRICS nations have, that China and India are some kind of enemies amongst each other. They have border disputes. They have some geopolitical issues. India leans a little bit more towards the Western nations. They're kind of an ally with the United States. However, India, the diplomatic and economic relationships of India are very pragmatic. So they can do business deals with the United States and the Western nations and Western Europe, the EU and Germany and the UK and such. Very good. But by other hand, they have pretty much a decent relationship with Russia and other of the Eastern economies, if you want to call it like that. So the other tendency, the other trend that we're seeing worldwide and has been accelerated since the COVID-19 crisis and the supply chain issues is that we are seeing what is called friendshoring. That is that you are establishing the supply chain of goods and services and economic ties with countries that you have very good political and economic relationships, instead of trying to risk it with other economies that you don't have as much good relationship, because that can harm at some point in the future the supply chain of each nation. Very good. And also nearshoring. Nearshoring, of course, is establishing supply chains with countries that are geographically close to you, but at the same time you have a decent diplomatic relationship and of course economic relationship as well. Now, what Venezuela brings to the BRICS nation is not a small thing, I have to say. First, natural resources. Venezuela has the largest oil reserve on the world, on the planet. Also is very rich on iron ore, natural gas, gold, silver, also many other industrial commodities. So Venezuela on that regard is very valuable regarding natural resources. Also has a strategic location on the Americas. Venezuela is on the north of South America. It's very close to the United States, actually, just a couple of hours on plane, but at the same time has a clear access to the Atlantic Ocean. Is quite relatively close to Western Europe. I'm talking geographically, despite they are not on the same continent. And at the same time, Venezuela can become a key geopolitical player within all of the Americas. So that's not a small thing. And lastly, and this is very important, Venezuela has a very good high skilled population. So it's very valuable, Venezuela, regarding human capital. So you have tens of millions of people that don't require a lot of training. They already have the skills in order to perform high skill endeavors and don't require as much training. So they only require the financial incentives to be good at their job. And lastly, Venezuela, despite the fact that there's awful economic crisis that we had the past decade, is not actually they have some sort of a decent infrastructure still. So it's not that you have to build the country from scratch. You have to do some maintenance, just patching up work, and of course develop a very niche new particular infrastructure or just rehabilitating the existing one. So on that regard, Venezuela offers a lot for the BRICS nations. In exchange, Venezuela is gonna have access again, something that they lacked the past decade, is that they were disconnected from the rest of the economic trade world because, of course, the political instability. Right now, we have very stable politics, and you might laugh saying that, and actually I'm trying to say this without laughing, but now the political situation in Venezuela is very stable. It's stable knowing that the Chavismo is going to stay the next decade, maybe many decades to come. You like it or not, it is what it is that going to happen? So you know the face of the people that you are going to do business with. And Venezuela has this particular administration of Venezuela has some sort of success making economic deals with economies that they trust. Usually there are the Eastern Bloc, talking economies like China, like Russia, like Turkey, and also the left-leaning nations in South America, like right now Brazil, right now Colombia, and Argentina, although in Argentina the economic integration is not as great. But still, Venezuela, when the Venezuelan authorities trust the other counterpart on the other side of the world, they can cut some reasonable business deals that brings economic opportunities on the Venezuelan soil, and the Venezuelan economy overall. So I see it as a good thing that Venezuela is most likely going to join the BRICS nations the next 2 years or so.
Thank you for watching Venezuela Insider. Please like, share, and subscribe. Follow us on social media. If you want to work with us, VenezuelaInsider.com. Thanks again and have a nice day.